Have you ever found yourself desperately holding on to a relationship, only to feel more drained and empty as time goes on? What if I told you that the struggle you're facing isn't just a rough patch? It might be God protecting your future. Sometimes God's no isn't rejection, it's redirection. In this video, we'll uncover 5 signs that God doesn't want you with someone, signs that could save you from heartbreak and lead you toward the peace you deserve. Trust me, the right person won't make you question God's voice, they'll confirm it. Let's dive in. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were fighting all the time just to make it work, only to find yourself more hurt than happy? It's not a coincidence. Many of us are taught that love is all about sacrifice and struggle, like if it doesn't hurt, it isn't real. But here's something they don't always tell you. God's will doesn't require you to beg, chase, or convince anyone. When God says no to someone, He's actually saying yes to protecting your future. There's a big difference between fighting for your relationship and fighting to keep someone who was never meant to stay. Often God makes that difference clear to us, though most of us only realize it after we've been through the heartache. One of the first signs God is telling you no is when you start losing your peace. It's easy to ignore or dismiss, but it's the most important sign of all. That nagging feeling you can't shake off, the unease in your gut that doesn't go away no matter how hard you pray or try to rationalize it. Guess what? That's God speaking to you. I remember being in a relationship where everything seemed perfect on paper. We had chemistry, history, and compatibility, but every time I was with that person, I felt unsettled. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but over time, the peace I had before started to fade. And that's when I realized, peace isn't just a nice feeling, it's God's way of guiding us. When peace disappears, it's like God's calling you out of that situation. He's not confused, He's clear. The Bible says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 15, "Let the peace of God rule in your hearts." The word rule here means to act like an umpire in a game making the final call. Just like an umpire doesn't hesitate to make a decision, God doesn't hesitate when it comes to your peace. When peace leaves, it's time to listen. Stop mistaking anxiety for excitement and don't call confusion butterflies. Here's the thing. When God wants you with someone, peace follows you into that relationship. But when He doesn't, peace will leave first. It's not something that's obvious or dramatic. It's a quiet, steady absence that gets louder the more you ignore it. If you're feeling anxious, confused, or uneasy, it's time to stop and ask yourself, is this God's peace? Trust me, peace is a powerful sign that shouldn't be ignored. It's one thing to face challenges in a relationship. After all, no relationship is perfect. But what happens when the doors just keep slamming shut no matter how hard you try to open them? You plan, you try, you pray, and yet everything seems to fall apart. Every conversation turns into a misunderstanding. Every step forward feels like 2 steps back. You keep telling yourself it's just a rough patch. We're going through a hard time, but we can make it through. But what if it's not just a rough patch? What if it's God? What if every door closing in your life is actually His way of protecting you from something you can't see yet? I've been there, trying so hard to make a relationship work that every obstacle seemed like just another challenge I needed to overcome. It's almost like you get stuck in the cycle of trying to force things to fit, even when the universe seems to be throwing up roadblocks at every turn. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9 says, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." Notice that it doesn't say God establishes your plans. It says He establishes your steps. And sometimes His steps for you are a step away. Here's the truth we often struggle to accept when God closes doors in your relationship. It's not a sign to fight harder, pray longer, or believe bigger to force those doors open. That's not persistence, that's resistance. You might feel like you're failing or giving up, but it's actually your spirit telling you that you're fighting God's protection. I've felt that exhaustion firsthand, when you're giving everything you've got to keep something together that's clearly falling apart. It's draining emotionally and physically. You can pray all day, but if the doors keep closing, it's time to stop and ask yourself, am I resisting God's will? In my own experience, when I finally let go of trying to break down those closed doors, I found peace. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, and suddenly I could see things for what they really were. The situation wasn't just a rough patch, it was God guiding me away from something that wasn't meant for me. Sometimes we want to fight through every closed door thinking that perseverance is the answer. But perseverance doesn't mean forcing things that aren't supposed to be. God's wisdom and timing are always better than our own. Trust me when you surrender, when you let go of the struggle. Doors that were once closed will open in the right time. And that leads us to the third sign that God doesn't want you with someone. Sign 3. Wise counsel keeps warning you. Let's be real for a second. Have you ever found yourself defending a relationship while everyone around you is saying, I don't know? Maybe this isn't the best choice. You're the one holding on, but the people who love you most are all raising red flags. Your parents, your friends, even your pastor, everyone is telling you the same thing. This relationship might not be what you think it is, but you're too deep in to see it. You see potential, the what could be, while everyone else sees the reality of the situation. But here's the thing. You're not dating potential. You're dating a real person, making real choices in the present. There's a powerful verse in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14 that says, "Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety." God often speaks through the people who love you most, those who have your best interests at heart. And sometimes He uses them to save you from yourself. I know what it's like to hear those warnings and think, they just don't get it. We have something special. I've been there ignoring the advice of loved ones because I was convinced that I could make it work. But the truth is, when everyone around you is saying the same thing, it's not coincidence, it's confirmation. God is speaking to you through them. It's easy to get caught up in the emotions of a relationship, but when you step back and listen to the wise counsel around you, you'll see things more clearly. It doesn't mean you should take advice from everyone, especially not from people who don't have your best interests at heart. But when godly people who truly care about you are all saying the same thing, it's time to listen. In my own life, I've seen how listening to trusted advice has saved me from making bad decisions. The people around me were right, even when I didn't want to admit it. Their guidance led me away from relationships that weren't meant to be, and toward the peace and clarity that only God can provide. So if you're hearing warnings from people who genuinely care about you, pay attention. Don't dismiss them just because you're blinded by the idea of what could be. God is speaking to you through those who love you most. So if you're feeling like the doors keep closing or your loved ones are giving you warnings, take a deep breath. You don't have to fight to keep something that God is trying to move you away from. The right person will confirm God's voice, not make you question it. Have you ever been in a relationship where little by little you started changing who you are to make it work? Maybe you began compromising things that once felt non-negotiable, like your values, your boundaries, or your faith. At first, it feels like you're just adjusting or making small sacrifices. But over time, you start to notice something troubling. You don't recognize yourself anymore. I've been there before. In a past relationship, I slowly began avoiding friends I once enjoyed spending time with because my partner didn't get along with them. I found myself skipping church on Sundays because they didn't want to go. What started as small compromises became bigger ones, and I could feel myself drifting from the person I used to be. I started justifying things I would have never accepted before telling myself it was just love. But deep down, I knew something was off. This is a big sign that God doesn't want you with someone when that relationship starts pulling you further away from Him instead of drawing you closer. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14 says, "What fellowship can light have with darkness?" It's not about being judgmental. It's about being honest with yourself. If the relationship is making you shrink your faith to fit their comfort zone, it's time to ask yourself, is this really God's will for me? When God doesn't want you with someone, one of the clearest signs is that your relationship should be strengthening your connection with Him, not pulling you away. The right partner will never make you feel guilty for praying, for reading your Bible, or for serving in ministry. In fact, they'll encourage you to be closer to God, not push you further away. I remember when I started making excuses for why I wasn't as close to God as I used to be. I told myself, it's okay to skip church this once because we're spending time together. Or I don't need to read my Bible today because they're not into that. But deep down, I felt the distance growing, not just between me and my faith, but between me and the person I was becoming. It was a slow and sneaky process, but eventually I realized I was letting someone else dictate how I lived my faith, and that's never a healthy place to be. The right person won't make you feel guilty for your faith. They won't try to dim your light to make themselves feel more comfortable. They will walk alongside you, supporting and nurturing your relationship with God, not standing in the way of it. If you're starting to lose your connection with God because of the person you're with, it's time to stop and evaluate. God is calling you to a relationship that honors Him and who He's made you to be. Sign 5. You feel more alone with them than without them. This one hits hard, doesn't it? It's one of the most painful and heart-wrenching signs that God doesn't want you with someone. You're technically together, but inside you feel incredibly lonely. You can be in the same room sitting next to each other, but there's an emotional distance so wide that it feels like you're oceans apart. I've been in relationships where I was physically together with someone but emotionally felt more isolated than ever. I could share my heart with them, express my needs, and still be met with indifference. I'd cry out for connection, but all I received in return was a blank stare or an unenthusiastic response. It felt like I was reaching out, but they were already checked out mentally and emotionally. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verses 9 through 10 says, "Two are better than one. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But what if the person who's supposed to lift you up is actually the reason you keep falling? What if the person you're supposed to lean on is the one making you feel more alone than ever?" Loneliness in a relationship is one of the deepest forms of pain, because it's not supposed to be that way. You're supposed to find support, encouragement, and connection in your partner. But instead, you feel more disconnected than ever. And that's when you have to ask yourself, is this God's will for me? God doesn't want you to feel alone in a relationship. He created us for connection, for partnership, and for deep emotional intimacy. When you're with someone who's causing you to feel more alone, that's a clear sign that God might be trying to show you the way out. It's not that He's being cruel, but rather He's being loving. He'd rather you be single and whole than in a relationship and broken. In my own experience, it was only when I stepped out of a relationship that I felt the weight of the loneliness I had been carrying. It wasn't that I was physically alone, but emotionally, I had been on my own for a long time. And when I finally took the step to walk away, I realized that God was giving me the space to heal and restore my peace. The loneliness I had felt was God's way of showing me that I deserved more connection, more love, and more fulfillment than I was receiving. You see, when God doesn't want you with someone, He'll allow you to feel that loneliness so intensely that staying becomes more painful than leaving. And that's not punishment, that's protection. God is giving you the chance to heal and grow so you can be ready for the right person, someone who will lift you up instead of dragging you down. If you've recognized yourself in any of these signs, don't panic. This isn't a moment to despair, it's a moment to trust. Trust that God's no is not rejection. It's redirection. Every door He closes is actually Him protecting you from a future you can't see yet. Trust that what He has for you is better than anything you could ever imagine. So what now? If you're in a situation where the signs are loud and clear, take a deep breath and surrender it to God. Trust that His timing is perfect, even if it doesn't make sense right now. Trust that He sees what you don't, and trust that He has something far better waiting for you. You might be feeling hurt, confused, or even heartbroken after recognizing these signs in your relationship. It's okay to feel that way, it's normal. When you realize that God is closing a door that you thought would lead to your future, it can feel like everything you planned has fallen apart. But here's the truth. God's no is not a rejection, it's redirection. In my life, I've been through my fair share of broken relationships. I've had those moments where I thought I'd found the one only to watch it slip away, often painfully. And at the time, it felt like the end of the world. But looking back, I can now see that those closed doors were actually God's protection. He was redirecting me to something better, even though I couldn't see it at the time. The Bible tells us in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." That's the key. God has plans for your future, and they're good. Even when it feels like everything is falling apart, He's working behind the scenes, orchestrating something far better than you could ever imagine. I know it doesn't always make sense in the moment. When you're in the middle of heartbreak or disappointment, it can feel like your world is upside down. But God is not in the business of causing pain for no reason. His plan is always to protect you, to heal you, and to prepare you for what's coming next. Sometimes that healing requires a separation, a step away from someone who wasn't meant for you. But that step isn't a punishment, it's a gift. If you're finding yourself in a season of heartbreak, don't panic. Don't let your feelings of loneliness or sadness make you believe that God has forgotten you. Quite the opposite. He sees you. He knows the hurt you're feeling, and He understands the pain that comes with walking away from someone you thought was meant for you. but He also knows what's best for you. Trust Him in this moment, even when it's hard. I can tell you from experience, the moment I trusted God's redirection in my life, I found peace. I stopped fighting for things that weren't meant for me. I stopped forcing relationships that were draining me. And as soon as I let go, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It didn't happen overnight, but God began to restore my heart. And over time, I realized that His timing was perfect, even when I couldn't understand it. God will never lead you down a path that doesn't align with His best for you. So if you're in a situation where everything seems to be falling apart, where peace is gone, and where doors keep closing, trust Him. Don't fight it. Surrender it. Let go of the struggle and trust that God sees what you don't. He's leading you to something better, even if it doesn't look like it right now. The right person will confirm God's voice. Here's the beautiful part: when the right person comes along, they won't make you question God's voice, they'll confirm it. I've learned this the hard way. In past relationships, I thought I was hearing God's voice, but in reality, I was ignoring the signs. I was so caught up in the idea of what could be that I couldn't see the truth of what was right in front of me. But when I finally let go and trusted God's redirection, I saw the kind of love and partnership He had been preparing me for. The right person. God's person for you will walk alongside you in faith. They will encourage your relationship with God, not pull you away from it. They will respect your boundaries, honor your values, and support your growth spiritually and emotionally. I know it's not always easy to wait for that right person, especially when you've already invested so much time and energy into a relationship. But trust me, the right person won't make you question whether or not they're meant for you. They'll confirm it, and they'll also confirm God's plan for your life. When I let go of what wasn't meant for me, I made room for what God had planned all along. And today I can say without hesitation that waiting on God's timing was worth it. The peace I feel now, the connection I have with my partner, and the way we encourage each other's faith, it's a blessing I never would have found if I'd stayed in the wrong relationship. So if you're in a place of waiting, or if you've just walked away from a relationship that wasn't meant for you, don't give up on God's plan. The right person will come at the right time. And when they do, you'll know. You'll feel it in your spirit, and you'll see how everything lines up perfectly according to God's will. Surrender and trust God's timing. When it feels like everything is falling apart, surrendering to God's will can feel impossible. But that's where trust comes in. Trusting God means letting go of what you thought you wanted and allowing Him to lead you to what He knows is best for you. His timing is always perfect, even when we can't see it in the moment. I know it can be scary. I know it's hard to trust when you're in the middle of pain. But I promise you, God will never fail you. He is not taking things away from you to hurt you. He is protecting you, preparing you for a future filled with hope and peace. When you trust Him, you'll see how He works everything together for your good. And if you're feeling heartbroken right now, take heart. God has never been wrong about you. You are worthy of a love that supports and uplifts you. You are worthy of peace. And no matter what's happening in your life today, trust that God is working behind the scenes to bring you closer to the future He has prepared for you. As we reach the final part of this message, I want to leave you with a simple yet powerful reminder. God's no is never a rejection. It's always a redirection. There are moments in life when everything seems to be falling apart, and it feels like we're losing the very thing we thought we needed. But that's when God is working the hardest on our behalf, preparing us, protecting us, and guiding us towards something better. I know how painful it can be to walk away from someone you care about. You may have invested so much into that relationship, believed so strongly in the potential of what could have been, that the idea of letting go feels impossible. But what if I told you that letting go is actually the best thing you can do? Not just for yourself, but for your future. There's a quote that I love. God will not give you something that will harm you, even if you think you want it. That's the truth. Sometimes we can't see the bigger picture. We don't understand why things are happening the way they are. But God is never wrong about us. He knows exactly what we need and exactly what we don't. Let me share a little about my own journey. I've been through relationships that I fought tooth and nail to make work. I put in the effort, I tried to compromise, I prayed, I hoped. But in the end, those relationships weren't the ones that God had for me. They weren't part of His plan for my life. And in each of those moments of heartache, I found myself questioning God. Why would He take something away that I thought was right for me? But as time went on, I realized that God was protecting me from what wasn't meant to be. I had to trust that His plan was better than my own. Looking back, I can see the wisdom in the way he closed those doors. It wasn't because I wasn't good enough or because I didn't deserve love. It was because God was preserving me for something far greater. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." That's God's promise to you. His plan for your life is full of hope, prosperity, and a future that is far greater than anything you could ever imagine. Sometimes that future includes waiting. It includes trusting that the person God has for you is worth the wait. When I finally allowed myself to trust God's timing, I saw how much peace I had been missing out on. I no longer had to struggle to make a relationship work. I no longer had to question whether or not I was enough. I learned to embrace the season of waiting, not because I wanted to be alone, but because I was trusting that God was preparing something beautiful for me in His perfect timing. God's protection in the waiting season. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is the waiting. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're in the middle of it. You might feel alone, confused, or even angry that things aren't going the way you hoped. But let me tell you, this God is not punishing you. He is protecting you. In the waiting, God is refining you. He is shaping your heart and preparing you for the relationship you truly deserve. The right person will not only confirm God's voice in your life, but they will also walk with you in faith, lifting you up and supporting your growth. The waiting season is a time for you to grow closer to God, strengthen your own heart, and become the person you need to be before stepping into a relationship that will truly honor Him. It's tempting to rush ahead and settle for something less than God's best when we feel like we've waited long enough. But I promise you, it is so worth the wait. God's timing is always perfect. You don't have to settle for anything less than the relationship that aligns with His will for you. When you trust Him with your heart, He will lead you to a love that is stronger, deeper, and more fulfilling than you ever imagined. The right person will confirm your faith. As you wait, remember this. The right person will never make you question God's voice. They will confirm it. I've seen it in my own life. The moment I met the person who was truly meant for me, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. I didn't have to fight for it. I didn't have to beg or convince. There was no anxiety, no confusion, just a clear, confident peace that God had brought us together. The right person will not cause you to question your faith. Instead, they will walk alongside you, encouraging you to grow in your relationship with God. They will respect your boundaries, honor your values, and support you in your journey. The right person will make your relationship with God stronger, not weaker. Letting go to make room for God's best. If you've been holding on to something that's clearly not meant for you, it's time to let go. I know it's hard. I know it's painful. But letting go is the only way to make room for what God has for you. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is surrendering to God's plan even when we don't understand it. When you let go, you're not giving up, you're making space for God to work. You're trusting that His plan for your life is better than anything you could ever create on your own. And in that surrender, you will find freedom, peace, and a love that is worth the wait. As we wrap up this message, I want to encourage you to trust God with your heart. Trust His timing, trust His protection, and trust His redirection. He is leading you to something greater than you can see right now. The right person will come when the time is right, and when they do, they will confirm God's voice in your life. But in the meantime, embrace the waiting season. Trust that God is preparing you for the beautiful future He has in store. Thank you so much for watching and for being a part of this journey. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know which sign stood out to you the most or how God has been working in your life. And don't forget to share this message with someone who might need it today. God bless you, and remember, His plan is always worth the wait. At the end of the day, trusting God's plan for your love life isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Remember, God's no isn't rejection. It's simply redirection towards something greater. So if you're walking through a season of heartbreak or uncertainty, trust that He's preparing something better for you. Keep the faith, embrace the journey, and let God's timing lead the way. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it too. Take care, and remember, your best is yet to come.